All right. So yeah, my name is Jennifer Wyld, and I did the MCR training 4 years ago. I actually grabbed my name badge off the fridge, and have stayed pretty active with the group. I was there the first year we were doing coffee grounds for compost, and still get to do that. So I always rack up a lot of hours. So I look like I do a lot, but really I just mostly pick up buckets of coffee grounds every week from places. And then have to find places to surreptitiously throw them when nobody's looking, because it's more than I can usually manage. But yeah, zero waste is really where my passion is, in recycling and that part of it. And so have spent a lot of the last 4 years trying to figure out how to have less of an impact. And then the pandemic hit, and try to still do as much of that as possible when lots of stores changed their policies about bringing your own containers and things like that. This amazing woman, Alex, opened a new zero waste store in our town. So made my life easier too. So Alex, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I took the Master Composter Recycler class, I believe it was 2019, actually. I always wanted to open a store. What kind of store? It's always changed. It used to be a coffee shop, and at some point it was a metaphysical store. And so now I'm the owner of Kindred Homestead Supply, which is in downtown Vancouver. And it's sort of, well, my husband jokes that it's literally all of my hobbies under one roof. It's composting, it's zero waste, it's beauty and skincare, it's personal care, it's homesteading, it's gardening. We have chickens in the courtyard. Like, I mean, I've managed to, it's house plants. I've squished all of it into this one thing under the ethos of taking better care of ourselves, while also taking better care of the environment and making good choices. I became a vegetarian in the early 2000s, and back then, all you had were Boca burgers, and that was kind of it. And now, luckily, there are, lots of options, and it's become more readily available. And Kindred Homestead Supply was very much a part of that for me, as far as like bringing zero waste to the general public and really lowering the barrier to entry for people to be able to live a lower waste lifestyle and also try new things. And I think we live in a culture today that makes us feel that everything should be Instagram or Pinterest ready. And if it's not, then we are somehow failing at whatever it is that we're trying to do, which is really backwards, right? I mean, we should be excited to learn new things and to make missteps along the way, and that's really how we learn. So Kindred was really about bringing that general ethos to people, while also sort of like hosting workshops and really meeting people where they're at. Not everyone is ready to jump into the deep end and make their own laundry soaps and body butters. And I commend those people who are, but it can be really overwhelming. And, I wanted to offer products that just met people where they were. And so I started Kindred Homestead Supply September of last year, if you can believe that, which was a crazy time to start a business. It was probably the best and the worst time. I mean, so many people were talking about waste. We were becoming really aware of the fact that the pandemic and the fact that we were driving less and consuming less meant that the environment around us was changing. I mean, in weeks of not driving, in weeks of no boats in the rivers and the oceans, all the while more of us were ordering takeout, and there's more takeout containers and more plastics being consumed. And all of a sudden you couldn't bring your own bags to the grocery store or your coffee cups to the coffee shop. So it was really a conversation that was being had even more so than previous to the pandemic. So it was good and bad. And, we made it, I don't want to say through, because we're not quite through yet, but we survived the winter. And anyway, I'll pull up my slides. So the idea of, low waste living, obviously we're trying to ditch just single use plastics, because anything that's only meant to be used once is just awful. We can't be consuming things like that. The earth isn't made of endless resources, and so we shouldn't treat it as such. Reducing disposable products, minimizing our food waste, mending and repairing before replacing, and really taking care of the items that we have and that we spend our money on. We're very immersed in this culture that tells us that, you don't need to take care of that because you can buy it. You can buy it for so cheap. I mean, so yeah, finding sustainable alternatives. So I prefer to use the term low waste living as opposed to zero waste living. I think that zero waste living can be really sort of zero sum, if you will. I think that it imparts a lot of shame on people, right? Like when the zero waste living idea came to fruition, it was this idea that you should be able to put all of your trash in a mason jar for a year. And if you weren't achieving that, then you were not zero waste. And so I really like to emphasize meeting people where they're at and, committing to consuming less and reusing and living and buying mindfully. So I prefer to use the term low waste. So, lots of studies have come out. I feel like, many of you are probably on, have your finger on the heartbeat of what's going on. But yeah, we know that by the year 2050, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish, which is absolutely devastating. And it's not just on the top and it's not just on the bottom, it's all throughout the ocean. And the idea of retrieving all that plastic is just not going to happen. So really it's about kind of stopping. How do we put less plastic in the ocean? So, this was, I sort of put the slide together really in the idea of talking about a lot of products that we offer at Kindred. I think similar to what I was saying about becoming a vegetarian in the early 2000s, one of the greatest things about the time in which we are living is that we have so many alternatives available to us, right? There are people and there are companies who are utilizing technology to their advantage to be able to make different products and do better, right, with the information that we have. So making biodegradable products that are made from sustainable materials. So everything that we carry at Kindred is it leaves no trace. It's all biodegradable, compostable, or recyclable at the end of its life. Within reason, it's really hard to run a retail store with no waste. I'm pretty proud of the amount of trash that we do produce on a weekly basis. It's about as much as my home produces, which is, I think, pretty amazing. So yeah, this is just some like alternatives that you can use, dish brushes and things with natural bristles and bamboo handles. Bamboo is incredibly renewable, fast growing, and biodegradable. Beeswax covers. All of these items you can make yourself. I really want to point that out. Going back to this idea of privilege, that like you can make bags out of fabric that you could reuse. You don't have to go out and buy something new. These are just ideas for folks who want to go out and buy something new and, instead of purchasing Ziploc bags, want to purchase something that they can use over and over again. But you can absolutely make beeswax wraps on your own. Yeah, Jen showing off her bags. Like, you could totally make those things. Not necessarily natural sponges, but I have some sponges that are made out of cotton, and the interior of the cotton sponge is literally cut off cotton fabric from other things that are made in the store. So they're just scraps. They're just fabric scraps. So the answer isn't to always buy new, because we produce a lot of trash, and that's really heartbreaking. I don't know about y'all, but after I took the Master Composter class, it really changed the way I shopped at the grocery store. Probably was the number one thing that changed for me. And the idea that whenever I put something in the trash, thinking like this thing is never going to see the light of day again, and how that really made me consider and reconsider what I was buying and how important it was and how crucial it was to the way I was living and what I could change. Other things, reusables are obviously greater than disposables. Dryer balls, if you are looking for an alternative to dryer sheets, these things are amazing. Swedish dishcloths. I think Swedish dishcloths have totally changed the game for me. My husband is a paper towel fanatic. So finding something that was a reasonable alternative for him was really important. And Swedish dishcloths are made of a wood cellulose and cotton fiber. So they're completely compostable. They soften when they get wet, just like you can see here in this photo. And then they can absorb up to 3/4 of a cup of water. So one Swedish dishcloth will replace 17 paper towels. And those Swedish dishcloths run about $6. So as far as like cost comparison, if you were to buy 17 rolls of paper towels, even if you were to buy the cheapest roll of paper towels, it's probably like $2, $1, $17 versus $6. I think that's pretty good.
So I want to say that I was late to the Swedish dishcloth game because when I had bought them before, because they have such a light background that I always felt like I stained them because I use a lot of turmeric and things. But Alex does sell ones that are in other colors. And I actually cut mine because I don't want one that size either. And so, you can find things that'll work with you. So even if the first one you find, you're like, I don't know, but maybe sometimes if you give it, like for me, it was like, it looked stained and dirty even when I washed it. So having one that's already dark purple, like made all the difference for me. So I'm a fan now.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're so good for things like berries, right? We're coming up on berry season, so you can cut them up, you can put them in a little Tupperware or like storage container for your berries to keep like drawing out the moisture. I have a toddler, so I'm constantly cleaning up sticky fingers and dirty mouths. And so, we do use a lot of rags in my house, but a Swedish dishcloth is amazing. One of the best things about them is that they dry in between your use. So instead of like a dishcloth or a rag that gets kind of smelly in between uses, these actually do dry out. And again, that wood fiber and that cotton is completely compostable. So when they start to come apart, you just chuck them in your compost pile. They're printed with soy ink, so you're good. There's no trash left behind. These produce bags, I get complimented on my produce bags every time I take them to checks. I know that with COVID, a lot of places were weird about you bringing your own containers. And I'm so grateful that we're getting to a point where coffee shops are accepting your cups again and grocery stores are letting you bring your own containers and things like that. These cotton bags are amazing. The tear weight is normally written on them, so you can have your person deduct that weight when you take them out. But I just think they're crazy useful. And like I said, I always get compliments on them when I take them to the grocery store. Yeah. And again, easy to make, right? Easy to make. You've got an old t-shirt or something, you could totally use something like that. You do not need to buy new. That is not the point.
So Alex will talk and I'll just run around my house and do show and tell. So.
That sounds good. Food scraps and yard waste. I feel like y'all know the deal here, right? Like compost is great. We definitely want to compost. One of the things that we're going to start offering at Kindred is to take compost from folks. I know a lot of people who live in apartment complexes, and I hear it constantly. I live in an apartment. They don't compost. What do I do with it? There are several websites you can go to find places near you that will compost. I know Pete is one of those sites. But we are also going to become one of those sites, basically. Where you can bring your compost, and we're going to just ask for like a few $1 donation to just help keep the program going. Because I always want to make sure that I'm doing things that are sustainable for my business. I mean, it is a business after all. So for better or for worse, we have to make sure that our bills are paid so we can continue to do good work. And hopefully be able to offer composting for folks who do not have it available to them. And if you are a person who lives in that kind of situation, I always recommend that you please write a letter to your building manager or your apartment manager or whoever it is. Mending and repairing. This is kind of my soapbox issue right now. As a millennial, I was not taught these things. I did not take home ec, which I'm really bummed about, actually. I didn't have anyone in my family who passed down. We really want to teach workshops at Kindred, and we are teaching workshops. And it's not really about doing it perfectly. It's about just being together in a group and learning how to do things together. And again, lowering that barrier to entry for folks and saying you don't have to do things perfectly. It doesn't have to be Instagram or Pinterest ready. Let's just gather as a community and teach each other how to do some things. Because learning how to darn my socks means that I have like 10 pairs of socks that don't have to get thrown in the trash that I can just continue to use. And I love that idea. So yeah, patching, darning. I mean, we have, of course, great programs here. Repair Clark County is wonderful. The Sew-Op Makerspace, if you haven't heard of that space, is in downtown Vancouver. She has like a classroom area with a bunch of sewing machines, and she teaches classes on how to sew. So she's amazing. And yeah, just really learning again to fast fashion is such a leader in waste when it comes to the clothing industry, to the fashion industry. And so I think relearning that we should just take care of the things that we own and instead of buying new. Because that's, this is just kind of a shameless plug. Other sustainable alternatives is really, this is a little snapshot of our bulk area. So like I said, wanting to meet people where they are, I have lots of ingredients for folks who want to make their own things or ready-made items such as that body butter. So if you're like Jen and you want to make your own stuff, I've got your shea butter, I've got your cocoa butter, I've got your coconut oil and your jojoba oil and whatever it is else that you need. I also have ready-made body butter that's ready to go. You can just come in and fill your stuff up. Choosing sustainable materials, anything that can be composted or recycled or that will biodegrade is obviously better. And this to me is really important, supporting companies that practice sustainability. There's a lot of greenwashing out there, right? Companies have figured out that people care about this. And so they put, labels on their stuff like 100% natural and organic. And unfortunately, those types of labels are not regulated at all. Anybody can put 100% natural on anything they want to, and nobody is doing anything about it. And that is heartbreaking because as a consumer, I'm looking for something like that. And to now know that anyone can put that on there it's so deceitful, right? So support companies that live their values, that live the values that you want them to. So like at Kindred, something that's really important to me is not just having products that are sustainable or sustainably sourced, but also participating in a closed loop system. So a lot of my suppliers allow me to send back containers that get refilled. So instead of just recycling those plastic containers and then it's just, we're perpetuating the problem on just a bigger scale. Some companies can't because organic certification and FDA regulation doesn't allow them to. So we, like I said, pass those 5-gallon and 2-gallon containers on, but other companies can. And there are bigger companies that are just totally greenwashing that pose themselves as being sustainable, but won't participate in any sort of closed loop system. So do some research, do some digging, ask the questions, right? Do you participate in a closed loop system? Where do you get your stuff from? Where do you source it from? Those are all good questions to answer. If you can grow your own food or support a local farm through a CSA, that's even better, lowering your carbon footprint that way when it comes to your food.
And there's also the Vancouver Farmers Market, if, that's another option where a lot of the farms that have local CSAs are selling their produce there as another option. So you can kind of more specifically pick and choose what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did kind of a breakdown, a lower waste room by room, just some ideas of things that you can do each room. The kitchen and the bathroom are hands down the biggest culprits when it comes to sustainability and lower waste. I think one of the biggest things for me is telling folks to add a compost bin to both of these rooms. The bathroom especially. Many of the things that you're using that are quote unquote disposable in your bathroom are actually compostable. So Q-tips, if they're made from cotton, you're good. Compost those babies. The toilet paper roll on the inside, compostable. Tissues, toilet paper, compostable. Cotton balls, compostable, all that stuff. Throw that in the compost bin. That's going to lower your trash in the bathroom an incredible amount. Using sustainable and compostable materials in the kitchen and the bathroom, kind of same thing. Switching to a safety razor in the bathroom. If shaving is your thing, I definitely recommend switching to a safety razor. You can always talk about refilling items or transitioning to bar soaps, things that require a little bit less processing or don't require a single-use plastic bottle to be transported in. There's lots of DIYs out there, right? And I'm happy. I have a lot of recipe cards at Kindred. So if you ever want to come and learn how to make your own body butter, I've got a recipe for that. I've got all of the DIY cleaner recipes that y'all learned in the Master Composter class. I've got all of those on cards, and I've got all of the ingredients to make them. Outside of that, the bedroom, the living room, you know, a lot of people, for those areas, a lot of it's mostly furniture. So I highly recommend, you know, looking at secondhand. You'd be amazed at the stuff that people give away or sell secondhand because they bought it at Target or IKEA or whatever, and it didn't work in their space. So sources like OfferUp, Craigslist, your local Buy Nothing group, if you're on Facebook, is amazing. Or even just asking around to friends and family. Swapping tissues for handkerchiefs. You wouldn't believe I sell out of vintage handkerchiefs. Every time I can get my hands on them, I sell out of them. It's incredible. It's really encouraging for me because I wasn't sure that how they would do, and I sell out of them every time I get them. So it's pretty cool. Let's see. Laundry room. We talked a little bit about dryer balls and switching to a lower waste laundry detergent. Line drying or using a dry rack when possible. And then outdoors, if you haven't heard about soil blocks, vintage handkerchief, awesome for the win. If you are a gardener in any capacity, I would love to chat with you more about soil blocks for starting your seedlings. I have all the materials you need to do this at Kindred, and I'd be happy to share my knowledge. I am actually going to be teaching a workshop probably in the fall on this. Soil blocks requires a little bit of investment, so there is quite a bit of money involved in this. But there are lots of things you can reuse. You can fold origami newspaper pots to start your seedlings in, or reuse whatever, any of your
cardboard egg cartons are good for that.
Cardboard egg cartons are great for that. Old takeout containers, any sort of plastic that's broken, it's a way to give it sort of a second life before you throw it out. And then of course composting, which you all know about. So.
All right. And so I wanted to, do you mind going back one just a little bit?
Sure.
So again, some of this for me on my own journey has been, a process for sure. I mean, and like one thing I like to tell people, like with the sponge, is that the shampoo bars, it took me a few times to find one that worked with my hair. And that also I learned in the process that sometimes it takes like a week or two for your hair, the oils in your hair to just kind of adjust to using such a different kind of shampoo. But again, just because the first one didn't work, I kind of gave up for a while, but then I was like, no, I really want to figure this out. So what it was for me was just trying a different brand that just worked better for my hair. I mean, I guess there's plenty of bottled shampoo. Like we don't think twice about maybe I need a different brand, but I didn't make that conclusion immediately with the shampoo bars. So, and what I've started doing for conditioner, because I have not found a conditioner bar, although Alex graciously gave me a sample one time, but apple cider vinegar I have found works really well. And that's something I can buy in bulk. But pre-pandemic, it was easier to find in bulk, but I just cut it with water and I use that as a rinse and I don't have to use conditioner anymore. And certainly in the kitchen, a lot of the things over time, I mean, I can buy, baking supplies, I can buy herbs and spices and salt and, ground pepper. I can buy a lot of oils in bulk. A lot of my snacking choices I've tried to adjust over the years too, as I just made lifestyle choices to work with this. So, one of my other pandemic stereotypes is that I started sourdough, but all I really make is crackers because I don't have the patience for bread. But now I can make homemade crackers, so I'm not buying crackers or chips as much. I also do things like popcorn instead of potato chips, just because I don't want to have to deal with the packaging. I eat a lot of chocolate, so my way to figure that out with packaging is bulk chocolate chips, and I can get those fair trade often too. And so that's my guilt-free, way to get my chocolate fix. So sometimes it's like a matter of adding things in a little over time as you just kind of keep making adjustments to what works for you and your lifestyle. I mean, I certainly wasn't ready to give up potato chips for a long time, but as I kind of thought more about it and I was making other changes, it was just, and not that I never eat potato chips, don't get me wrong, but I'm certainly much less likely to buy them than I was, 4 years ago, because, I think more about the consequences, like Alex said. I mean, I know that bag is just going to go in the trash. There's no other option for it. And so, and usually a bowl of popcorn is a really delicious, salty, greasy snack that I can enjoy, and get some of those same flavors and, whatever mouthfeel kind of thing. So yeah. So part of it, again, I like to always just emphasize, like Alex said, we don't have to go all in from the beginning, because that can be super overwhelming. I mean, like, somebody had told me, but it's taken me 20 years to make a lot of the changes I've made, they've just been a slow thing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the DIY personal care, just because as a woman, menstrual supplies are one that was one of the first switches I made, was using washable menstrual pads, which seems like those are harder to find now, because I think most people have chosen they like the menstrual cup instead. But I mean, those are options for that, because it's like, I think, like most of us think, well, fine, we'll use cloth diapers, but, a lot of women are still using disposable menstrual supplies. And like, really, it's just a matter of being more comfortable with your own body and thinking again about the consequences of the choices you're making. And, but sometimes, I mean, like, and it's interesting because one of my daughters was really comfortable with that choice, but my other daughter still isn't. And so, just so everybody, again, so, I mean, when I was 15, I probably wouldn't have thought that was cool either. But, in my 20s, it was like, yeah, I am woman, hear me roar. I can handle all those kind of things. And so that's just another one that I think people don't always think about when we give presentations. So I'll have the uncomfortable conversation. And I want to say Chris Potter, who she's actually kind of one of my low waste heroes. And we've had some somewhat socially awkward conversations about toileting things too. And so, using little, cloth, little like small rags and things like that instead of toilet paper, especially when it's just urine. Like, I mean, again, like we can deal with that with diapers, which, are kind of grosser sometimes than, just if I've gone to the bathroom. And so, but again, that's not a change I probably would have made, even 10 years ago. But now I'm like, no problem. So yeah.
And
so
I do have reusable menstrual pads and the cup at Kindred.
Yeah. It's just funny. It seemed like, I mean, again, when I first was on this path, kind of like when you were first a vegetarian, which, I've also experienced that journey, having been a vegetarian since like the late 80s. It's like, it's a totally different world. But yeah, I mean, back then there was like, and when the menstrual cups came out, they were not comfortable like they are now, because they were like really rubber and not so nice. But so yeah, so it's just funny that to me, it seemed like first it was all menstrual pads in one cup, and now it's like all the cups and just rarely. But yes, I did see them in your store. So, but those are nice too. I mean, I've had the same menstrual pads because they're washable. I mean, for decades, I don't know. I mean, they don't go bad. So just keep washing them. In Vancouver, we've got, places from like New Seasons and Chuck's, but also Winco has an amazing bulk section, and you can get some of the things, like that are used in some of the green cleaning kits there too. Like, I mean, they sell baking soda and things like that, you're not going to necessarily find at your local Safeway in their bulk department, but Winco has a really great, robust bulk section.
So at Kindred, we do accept hard to recycle plastics. So anything that is not accepted curbside, that's a number 2, 4, 5, or 6. So things like yogurt lids, and the lids, if you get the milk from Chuck's, it's in the glass bottles, those little plastic lids, I think those are like a number 4. A lot of takeout containers are these numbers. So 2, 4, 5, and 6. That is not recycled curbside. You can bring into Kindred. We do ask for a few dollar donation. That just helps us pay. We're working with James Recycling, which is out of Portland. And so we do have to pay them to come in and accept the recycling. So if you could just throw us a few bucks if you're going to bring in that plastic, that's another option in the meantime. The other thing I'll say is that like this in some ways comes to like voting with your dollar. We are voting for the future that we want with every dollar that we spend. So supporting companies that do not package their items, making that choice when you are doing your shopping, if you have the ability to shop at a place where they do not package their grapefruits or their onions in bags, buy the ones that are not packaged, even if it costs a little bit more. And again, write a letter to that company, right? Somebody's reading those emails, somebody's reading those letters that come through to them. So letting them know, hey, I won't purchase your items anymore because they're packaged this way, and here's how I'd like to see it differently.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, that's hard. Like for whatever reason, my experience is that like a lot of grocery stores will have herbs, like fresh herbs in bulk, but often for whatever reason, basil's almost always in a plastic thing. And I think because it's more fragile. So one time when I was at New Seasons and I'm like, why don't you all have the bulk, basil? And they, honest to God, they went and they just opened up one of their plastic clamshells and threw it in the thing. And I'm like, I'm standing right here. Like I see you doing that. It's like, it doesn't, I mean, it appeases my own personal guilt, maybe this much that if I hadn't seen it happen, but really that doesn't solve the problem. That really, that was a single use plastic thing that basil was packaged in that now I'm still walking out of the store with. So yeah. So sometimes, I mean, yes, so maybe I just don't buy basil unless I can get it at the farmer's market for 2 months in the summer and 10 months of the year. Like if I can't grow it at home, I just don't get it. But then again, sometimes I really want basil. And so I make those choices anyway. So, I mean, it's all like a balance about still enjoying life. Somebody said, their desire to be a minimalist conflicted with their low waste lifestyle too. So, I mean, sometimes we are just balancing different things. I mean, for me during the pandemic, like for years have not really gotten takeout from anywhere because I don't want to have to deal with the packaging. I mean, I'll go to a restaurant and if I have leftovers, I'll bring my own container to bring them home in. But during the pandemic, I also really wanted to support local restaurants and they were hurting. And so I just kind of made the choice that I'm still going to go out to eat once a week because I don't want all these other people to go out of business and people to lose their jobs. And I'll deal, for the foreseeable future with, I'll find ways to reuse what I can and pass on and recycle what I can. But, it was just a compromise I was willing to make for another value of mine, which was supporting local independent restaurants who were trying to survive. And so, a lot of the times that is what we're doing. We're just balancing different values that we hold with some of these things.
It was great. Thank you, Jen and Alex. Alex, I'm going to have to stop by your store. I feel like I just keep hearing about it constantly. So I'm sure I'll be seeing you around very soon. I need some new shampoo bars, so I'm going to hit you up.
Got you.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, guys. We'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.